Lucas, she said softly. I think Italy changed me. He frowned. What does that mean? She stood. It means I'm not the girl you cheated on anymore. Lucas grabbed her wrist. Emily, wait. A deep voice interrupted. You should let her go. Lucas turned. A tall man in a black suit stood a few steps away. Lucas frowned. Who are you? Emily's heart skipped because she recognized that voice immediately. Alessandro Romano looked at Lucas with cold calm. Someone who dislikes watching men make poor decisions. Lucas scoffed. This is none of your business. Alessandro stepped closer. On the contrary. His gaze flicked briefly toward Emily. Emily, he said softly. Did you want this conversation to continue? Emily shook her head. No. Alessandro nodded once. Then he looked back at Lucas. You heard the lady. Leave. Lucas bristled. And if I don't? For a moment, Alessandro stared at him. Then he smiled slightly. It was not a friendly smile. Then, he said quietly, you will learn why people in this city avoid disappointing me. Lucas felt a sudden chill, because something in Alessandro's voice sounded less like a threat, and more like a promise. The courtyard of the university slowly emptied. Lucas had already walked away, pale and silent after Alessandro's calm but unmistakable warning. Emily stood beside the fountain, arms folded. Alessandro remained a few steps away, watching her carefully. Finally, she spoke. You didn't have to threaten him. I didn't threaten him. Emily raised an eyebrow. That sounded exactly like a threat. Alessandro shrugged slightly. I simply informed him of reality. She sighed. You do realize normal people don't talk like that. Emily, he said calmly. I stopped being a normal person a long time ago. That was obvious. Students nearby whispered as they passed. Some recognized Alessandro, some didn't. But everyone instinctively gave him space. Emily noticed. You shouldn't come here, she said quietly. Why not? Because people are staring. They always stare. That's not what I mean. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If you're a Mafia, they're definitely enemies. It could become dangerous for me. For the first time, Alessandro's expression hardened slightly. It already has. That sounds ominous. Emily sighed and rubbed her temple. This is exactly why dating a Mafia boss is a terrible idea. Who said anything about dating? Alessandro said calmly. That was an introduction. Emily folded her arms again. An introduction to what? His gaze darkened slightly. To me? Then Alessandro spoke again. There are rules. You should hear them. Fine, she said. Let's hear the Mafia rulebook. Alessandro took a step closer. His voice lowered slightly. Rule 1. You do not belong to anyone who disrespects you. Her heart skipped. That sounds reasonable. It is also non-negotiable. She nodded slowly. Okay. Rule 2. If someone harms you, they answer to me. Emily frowned. That sounds very possessive. It is. And rule 3? She asked carefully. Alessandro's gaze held hers. Do not lie to me. Emily tilted her head. That's it? For now. You know, she said slowly, those rules sound suspiciously like you think I belong to you. For a moment, Alessandro said nothing. Then he replied calmly, I think you are a woman worth protecting. Emily's pulse quickened. And if I don't want protection? Everyone needs protection. Not like that. His expression softened just slightly. Emily. Yes? You walked into my life 2 days ago, and already men are fighting over you. She rolled her eyes. Lucas doesn't count. Perhaps not. He stepped closer. But I do. Emily's breath caught slightly. You're very confident. I rarely lose. She held his gaze. And what exactly are you expecting from me? Alessandro didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and placed a small invitation card on the bench beside her. Emily looked down. Gold lettering. Elegant. A location she didn't recognize. "A party?" she asked. "A gathering." Emily picked up the card. "Why are you inviting me?" "Because," Alessandro said quietly, "if you're going to be in my world, you should see it." Emily immediately regretted saying yes. The villa was enormous. Music drifted through the warm night air. Luxury cars lined the long driveway. Men in expensive suits stood in small groups, talking. Women in elegant dresses moved through the courtyard like something out of a movie. Emily stepped out of the car carefully. Her black dress felt suddenly too simple. "What am I doing here?" she whispered. "Attending a party?" Alessandro stood beside her. Tonight, he wore a dark charcoal suit instead of black. Somehow, he looked even more dangerous. "You didn't tell me it would be this intense." "You didn't ask. That seems to be a theme with you." He offered his arm. "Stay close to me." Emily hesitated, then took it. The moment they walked inside, something changed. Conversations lowered. Eyes followed them. Emily noticed the way men nodded respectfully to Alessandro. The way people stepped aside. It wasn't just respect. It was fear. She leaned toward him. "They're staring at me." "Yes, because you're with me." That answer didn't help her nerves. A tall man approached. Older, gray hair, sharp suit. "Alessandro," he said warmly. "Good to see you." "Marco," Alessandro replied. Marco's eyes moved to Emily. "And who is this?" Alessandro didn't hesitate. "Emily." Marco smiled politely. "A pleasure." But Emily noticed something else in his expression. Curiosity, calculation. After Marco left, she whispered, "He was analyzing me." "Everyone here will." "Great. You'll survive." They moved deeper into the villa. Crystal chandeliers, soft music, waiters carrying champagne. It looked like a glamorous European party. But Emily could feel something else beneath the surface. Power, danger, secrets. She leaned closer to Alessandro. "Your friends are intimidating." "Not friends." Emily blinked. "What are they?" "Competitors." That didn't make her feel better. A group of men across the room watched them closely. One of them whispered something. Another laughed. Alessandro followed her gaze. His expression cooled instantly. "Stay here." "What?" He gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Do not leave this room." "Alessandro!" But he was already walking toward the group of men. Even from across the room, Emily could feel the tension. The smirking man looked toward her. Then back to Alessandro. Whatever he said next made Alessandro's eyes darken. She had no idea what was happening, but she was suddenly very aware of something. Every single person in this room knew exactly who Alessandro Romano was. And they all understood one thing clearly. The American girl standing behind him had somehow become his. Emily watched Alessandro cross the room with controlled, deliberate steps. The men he approached were still smiling at first, but something about Alessandro's presence erased that confidence quickly. From across the hall, Emily couldn't hear the conversation. She could only read the body language. The man who had been laughing earlier, a tall blonde man with slicked back hair, said something with a smirk. Alessandro leaned closer. Whatever he said in return wiped the smirk off the man's face instantly. Emily shifted nervously beside the marble column where she had been told to wait. A woman in a silver dress walked past her and whispered to her companion. "That must be the American girl." Emily pretended not to hear. Another man nearby muttered quietly. "Romano moves quickly." The second man answered, "He always does." She suddenly felt like she had been dropped into a game where everyone knew the rules, except her. A moment later, Alessandro returned. His expression was calm again, but his eyes were darker. "What happened?" Emily asked. "Nothing important." Emily tilted her head. A misunderstanding that involved glaring at each other like characters in a crime movie. He looked mildly amused. "You notice a lot. You're the one who brought me to a party full of suspicious billionaires. Some are only millionaires." Haha, not comforting. Alessandro gestured toward the terrace. "Come." They stepped outside into the cool night air. The noise of the party softened behind them. Florence stretched below the villa, glowing under the moonlight. Emily leaned against the stone railing. "You didn't answer my question." "Which one?" "What was that about?" Alessandro looked out over the city. "The man I spoke to represents another family." Emily stiffened slightly. "Another Mafia family?" "Yes. And he doesn't like you." "That is normal." Emily frowned. "What did he say?" Alessandro hesitated for a moment. Then he answered honestly. "He suggested that bringing you here was irresponsible." "Why?" "Because you are not part of this world." "That sounds reasonable." "Yes." But he also suggested something else. Emily waited. His voice grew quieter. "He implied that someone like you could be taken." Emily's pulse jumped. "Taken?" "Yes." "As in kidnapped?" "Potentially." She stared at him. "And you're telling me this after bringing me to the party?" "I brought you here so everyone would see you beside me." Emily frowned. "That doesn't sound safer." "It is." "How?" Alessandro turned to face her. "Because now they know something important. That you are not available." "That sounds very possessive." She crossed her arms. "You didn't ask if I wanted to be part of this mafia system." "No." Before she could respond, a man stepped onto the terrace. One of Alessandro's security guards. "Signore." Alessandro turned. "Yes?" "There has been movement." The guard glanced briefly at Emily before continuing. "Two unfamiliar vehicles near the outer gate." Alessandro's expression sharpened instantly. "Which family?" "Not confirmed." Emily felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "What does that mean?" Alessandro's voice became calm again, but it was the calm of someone preparing for something dangerous. "It means the party is over." The villa changed in seconds. Music stopped. Security moved quickly but quietly through the building. Guests began leaving without asking questions. Emily stood beside Alessandro in the hallway. "What's happening?" "Nothing yet." He looked down at her. "You're going home." "I can leave by myself." "No, I'll take you." His tone was firm. She sighed. "You don't have to escort me everywhere." "I do tonight." They walked outside. Several black cars were already lined up. Men spoke into radios. Emily glanced around nervously. "Are we about to be attacked?" Alessandro opened the car door for her. "Probably not." She slid into the seat. Alessandro joined her. The car pulled away from the villa quickly. Emily watched the dark countryside pass outside the window. "Why any of this matters?" Alessandro studied her. "Power attracts enemies. So it means rival mafia families might kidnap me. That is the extreme scenario." Emily sighed. "You really should have put that on the invitation card." Warning: possible kidnapping. For the first time that night, Alessandro laughed softly. "You are handling this unusually well." "I'm choosing denial." The car slowed as they entered the city again. Streetlights reflected across the Arno River. Emily looked at Alessandro. "I wonder, if this is so dangerous, why involve me at all?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said quietly, because walking away from you is not something I intend to do. Emily felt a sudden warmth in her chest. Hope you got the capability to protect me. I can be certain of that. The car stopped outside her apartment building. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Emily spoke softly. Alessandro? Yes? Are you sure this is worth the trouble? His dark eyes met hers. Yes. The certainty in his voice made her heart skip. She stepped onto the sidewalk. The car didn't leave immediately. Emily looked back. Alessandro was still watching her through the open window. His voice carried softly across the quiet street. Emily, from now on, you don't walk home alone. She laughed lightly. Another rule? Yes, she shook her head. You're impossible. But you're starting to grow on me. 3 days passed quietly. Emily tried to return to normal life. Classes, coffee with Sophia, studying at small cafes along the narrow streets of Florence. But something had changed. She noticed it everywhere. The same black car sometimes parked near her apartment. Men who seemed to be reading newspapers but always looked up when she walked past. Alessandro's voice echoed in her mind. You don't walk home alone. At first she thought he was exaggerating. Now she wasn't so sure. That afternoon she left the university library just as the sun began to set. The streets were busy with tourists and students. Emily felt almost foolish for worrying. Maybe Alessandro just likes dramatic warnings, she thought. Her phone buzzed. Alessandro. Where are you? Emily smiled slightly. Leaving campus. Wait there. She rolled her eyes. I'm capable of walking home. No reply came. She slipped her phone into her bag and started down the street. The sky turned orange behind the rooftops. Florence looked peaceful. Beautiful. Normal. Then a black van pulled to the curb beside her. Emily barely noticed at first, until the door slid open. 2 men stepped out. Everything happened fast. Too fast. One grabbed her arm. Hey! A hand clamped over her mouth. Panic exploded in her chest. She kicked hard, trying to break free. The street suddenly felt far too quiet. No one close enough. No one paying attention. One of the men growled in Italian. Hurry! Emily twisted violently, biting the hand over her mouth. The man cursed. She tried to scream. But suddenly another car roared around the corner. Brakes screeched. Doors slammed. Several men jumped out. The attackers froze. Emily recognized the first voice immediately. Cold. Controlled. Terrifying. Let her go! Alessandro Romano stepped into the street. The men holding Emily hesitated. One of them whispered something nervously. Emily saw it clearly now. Fear. They were afraid of him. Alessandro walked closer slowly. Last chance, he said quietly. The man gripping her arm shoved her forward and jumped back toward the van. But it was too late. Within seconds, Alessandro's men had surrounded them. Emily stumbled backward. Her heart hammered. Alessandro reached her in 2 quick strides. Emily. His hands gripped her shoulders firmly. Are you hurt? She shook her head, still breathing hard. No. His jaw tightened slightly. Behind them, his men dragged the attackers out of the van. Emily whispered, This is exactly the kidnapping you warned me about. Yes. You were very calm about it. I was prepared. She stared at him. You knew this might happen. I suspected. Emily exhaled shakily. Well, she said, I officially take back every joke about your rules. Alessandro pulled her into his arms suddenly. For a moment, she froze. Then she realized something. He wasn't holding her possessively. He was holding her like someone who had just nearly lost something important. His voice dropped to a low whisper near her ear. No one touches what is under my protection. Emily felt her heartbeat quicken again. Words spread quickly. Within days, everyone in Emily's circle knew something had happened. Lucas found out the following week. He cornered Emily outside the campus cafe. "I heard something crazy," he said, "that you were almost kidnapped." Emily sighed. "That part is unfortunately true." Lucas leaned closer. "And that the guy you're seeing, the Romano guy, had half the city looking for the attackers." Emily didn't respond. Lucas laughed nervously. "You can't seriously be involved with someone like that." "Like what?" "Like him." Emily tilted her head. "You mean powerful?" "I mean, dangerous." She shrugged. "Both can be true." Lucas lowered his voice. "Emily, I looked him up. He's not just Mafia. He controls businesses across half the region. People disappear when they cross him." Emily studied Lucas carefully. "Are you trying to scare me?" "I'm trying to wake you up." She leaned slightly closer. "Let me ask you something." Lucas frowned. "What?" "When you cheated on me, did you ever once worry about losing me?" He hesitated. "That's not the same thing." "It is to me." Emily stepped back. "The difference between you and Alessandro," she said quietly, "is that one of you fights for what he values." Lucas shook his head. "You're blinded." "Maybe." She turned to leave. Lucas called after her. "You think he loves you?" Emily paused. Then she smiled slightly. "I think," she said, "he's not the kind of man who lets something important slip away." Florence glowed beneath the stars. Emily stood on the terrace of Alessandro's villa again. The same terrace where everything had begun. The city lights stretched endlessly below. Alessandro joined her quietly. "You should be resting." "I'm fine." He studied her carefully. "You were brave." "I was terrified." "That is usually how bravery works." Emily laughed softly. "You're surprisingly philosophical for a crime boss." "I contain multitudes." She turned to face him. "You saved me." "Yes." Emily leaned against the railing. "You know what? My life used to be very simple." He waited. "I worried about exams," she continued. "About whether my boyfriend would text me back." Alessandro said nothing. "Now," she said, smiling faintly, "I'm dating the most powerful criminal in Florence." "Are you?" Emily looked up at him. "Aren't I?" Alessandro stepped closer. "You walked into my world and refused to be intimidated by it." Emily held his gaze. "That sounds like a terrible survival instinct." "It is exactly the instinct I admire." She smiled softly. "Appreciate your admiration. Now you decide whether you want a quiet life or a dangerous one beside me." Emily looked out over the city again. Florence, the place where everything had fallen apart, and somehow come together. Finally, she turned back to him. "Well, I've already survived one kidnapping attempt." "That is true." "And I've met your terrifying Mafia associates." "Yes." "So I guess there's only one question left." Alessandro waited. Emily smiled. "Does your rule book specify what happens in bed?" For the first time in weeks. Alessandro Romano laughed. And somewhere in the city below, Florence carried on, unaware that the most dangerous man in the region had just found the one woman he would never let go.